Hey, how's it going, everybody? Sean here from Zoobox. Come today with a fan-requested movie review. It was requested by Scottie, who's our honorary Zoobox member. He's been there since the beginning. So this one's for you, buddy. Freddy vs. Jason from 2003, directed by Ronny, stars Robert Englund, Ken Kersinger, Kelly Rowland, Monica Keena, Jason Ritter, Chris Marquette, Brendan Fletcher, and others. The plot synopsis is Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees return to terrorize the teenage population, except this time they're out to get each other too. I've always kind of liked this movie. I'm not even a huge fan of these franchises, Nightmare or Friday the 13th. I like them, don't get me wrong. I like them enough to own them, and I've watched them more than once. So, I don't know. What does that make me? I don't know what it makes me. But like if I never got to see them again, I don't think I would feel bad. I do enjoy them though. I think they're a lot of fun. And Freddy vs. Jason is no different. I've always kind of had a soft spot for it. I liked it a lot when it came out. I remember seeing it in theaters. I think I saw it twice. Saw it once by myself, and then I dragged my friend. And my friend wasn't really into these movies at all. And he had a good time. There is something at the core of Freddy vs. Jason that is just fun. It's very competently made, and it has kind of a style to it that is not as bad as a lot of movies that came out in this era, you know? And it was willing to kind of go hard in the paint, as they say. It was willing to be like a rated R horror movie, and which was crazy because you could think that they would want to wring every dollar out of this as they could. It was a big thing. It was in development hell forever, and famously, this movie was teased way back in the early '90s with Jason Goes to Hell. There's a scene where you see Jason's mask in the dirt, and Freddy's claw comes up and grabs it and pulls it under, and you hear a laugh. The reason why it never materialized because of rights issues. Jason Voorhees was a property of Paramount for a long time. Freddy Krueger, New Line Cinema. And I can't remember exactly the particulars of how they ended up doing it when they did it in 2003. But, I mean, they had planned on making another one because they wanted to do Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. That was another. It's a script that was written. They did some production on it. And if you don't know, Ash is from the Evil Dead series. It'd be Bruce Campbell's character. So, yeah. But let's just talk about the movie itself. Like I said, I think it's actually a pretty fun movie. It holds up okay. It's more of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie than it is a Friday the 13th movie because of just the construct of what they're trying to accomplish and what they're doing with just kind of the dream world. And Freddy is the one pulling all the levers. This is his plan, What I do like about the movie, though, especially nowadays, is there is a cool meta layer to it about this idea of mythological characters and kind of competing for the hearts and minds of people, and this idea that you don't exist if people don't believe in you, if you don't talk about you. And that's basically what the plot surrounds, when you're talking about Freddy and his plan to come back, is because the town itself purposefully kind of erased the history of Fred Krueger, because that's what they found. They found if people aren't aware of him, if they don't know about him, then he can't manifest. But then there's a flip side to that where it's if you don't remember your history in some capacity, it's doomed to repeat itself. So it'll come back. So there is kind of that thing going on. And then just on a surface level, the whole thing with Jason Voorhees kind of being uncontrollable, and Freddy getting fucked, and Freddy getting frustrated. It's pretty good. It's one of my favorite, actually, performances of Robert Englund as the character of Freddy Krueger. This one, my favorite Nightmare movie, and I think I said this when I talked about Nightmare on Elm Street 2, is Dream Warriors. It's Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which is kind of the least scary of them. It's more of almost like a fantasy adventure movie, and Freddy Krueger's the big baddie, and they have to go fight him. They kind of turn into superheroes, the kids in the mental institution. But this one is a pretty decent second. I will say it's got a pretty decent kind of sense about it. It's got an identity that is unique to itself. Like I said, it does feel like a Nightmare movie, but it also feels like something different. It did feel like a proper modernization of these kind of concepts, this kind of movie. Like, yeah, like in 2003, it was just not a very exciting time to be into horror movies. I'm trying to think what else came out specifically, but it was just a very vanilla period. It was everything was becoming very commercialized. Everything had kind of lost its edge, and Freddy vs. Jason kind of stood apart from that. And it was really refreshing in its own weird way. And I wish that it had continued, like they had done something just in this vein. This is the send off for Robert Englund. This is the last time he actually played the character, because he didn't. Robert Englund is a weird guy. He's a very pretentious dude. He gets very pretentious about even this character, these characters he plays in like these kind of bad horror movies, which I don't have a problem with in a real sense. Like I think you got to be that way to be successful at what you're doing when you're playing a character like this. You got to buy into the bullshit, kind of, and he totally has. But he was good. They were going to do. I think they wanted to do a prequel where you would find out like the backstory of Freddy Krueger, even though we knew the backstory, but they wanted to do like a proper. Nah, I wouldn't really be that interested, because that's the thing. Like, the more you reveal the mystery of these characters, the less interesting they are. The less we know, almost the better. We just need the implication. We need the inference. We don't need specifics. When you get too specific and you actually make a whole movie about how Freddy Krueger is born and how he grows up, then it just stops mattering. A good example of that would be Hannibal Lecter. And Thomas Harris did this. This is not even like a Hollywood conceit. Thomas Harris, the creator of Hannibal Lecter, the writer of Black Sunday up till Hannibal Rising, and Silence of the Lambs, Red Dragon. He decided he was going to do one about Hannibal Lecter's childhood, and just it was no, it just automatically just makes something less interesting, less scary. You've given me these specifics I just don't need, especially with Hannibal. The craziest thing about Hannibal is that it just ends up being super contrived, and you're just like, oh god, I just wish we had left this alone. I was happy kind of guessing. Just give me context clues, like don't need to spell it out for me. So one of the cooler things in this movie, though, I would say that it still works to this day, is all like the dream stuff, all the fights. The fights between the two main characters are actually pretty fucking rad. They're pretty awesome, and they got a great style. And other than the new metal 2003 soundtrack, which is funny, back when I was a kid, I owned this soundtrack. With its weird, it's got what Power Man 5000 was on there. I can't remember the names of the other bands because they all all the music from that time just kind of bleeds together. Power Man 5000, not a good band, but sticks out. At least it sounds like its own thing. A lot of those bands didn't. Yeah, the fights were awesome. And then there's this cool thing with Freddy where you feel like there are moments where he kind of embodies all the different eras of the character. And there's a lot of callbacks to other dreams, other nightmares from the series. There's a lot of, even just the way they'll frame a shot will be kind of similar. And there was some cool stuff there. I really, really dug it. Like there's one when he's at the very end of the movie, when the main protagonist is like trying to pull him into the reality, into the real world. And then he looks like the new Nightmare Freddy for like just a few scenes, just not even scenes, just a few moments, really. But if I do have a complaint about the movie, though, I would say that the plot is like, it's very plotty. It's very plot heavy. There's like, not that there's a lot of moving pieces, but the process of discovery, all the characters finding out what's going on and like coming to realizations is like very laborious, and it's so obvious, and it's like a foregone conclusion. So I wish it was kind of just scaled back a little bit, and we just got something a little bit more straightforward. And there was another problem with the movie, like you don't really understand the rules of the world. Freddy, this is back to Freddy kind of being able to do whatever the fuck he wants. Like, how did he... I mean, granted, like I said, you don't want to explain too much of this stuff because it ultimately doesn't really matter. You got to kind of understand what you're watching. the kind of thing you're watching and just say, fuck it. Just go with it. I appreciate that. I respect that. I think just from a pacing issue, the pacing issues, like the plot stuff gets in its own way. Kind of in the middle. Like the middle is a little bit of a drag because not a lot happens. That's another part of it. Just not a lot happens that you don't already like assume in terms of plot. So the twists just don't really land, right? But I wish that the Freddy stuff, they just don't. He just feels like he can do whatever he wants. Like he's possessing people at one point, which I guess, you know, going back to Nightmare on Elm Street 2, that was the big thing with that one. They went a weird route and then they ended up, you know, doing that. Sorry, my kid's in the other room playing. I'm trying to make sure he's not dead. I don't feel like editing this video, so that you have to experience that. I think he's singing about spooky skeletons. How apropos. Yeah, I wish that it was just better established, so I kind of knew where the tension points were. You know, when you make a movie like this, a lot of it's predicated on understanding a certain rule set, because that's how they can set up scares. That's how they can subvert your expectations and scare you in different ways. If you don't really understand how something works in this way, even just on a mechanical level, then you can't be surprised. And that's Freddy versus Jason. It does suffer from that. Not as bad as other things. I mean, Jason has always been a weird one where you're just like, I don't understand the logic of how he accomplishes what he accomplishes in general most of the time. So there's that. I mean, do they even really explore how Freddy's able to find Jason Voorhees while he's living in the dreamscape? I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I might actually watch the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, the one that came out in like 2009, 2010, because I've only watched it once and I haven't seen it in years, and I know it's not well regarded. But I think at the core of A Nightmare on Elm Street, I really like the core concept, the core idea. I actually think Freddy Krueger is a cool character. It's just, he got wasted a lot because they just didn't know what to do. And, you know, they're trying to keep a franchise alive. They want to pump something out every year, and a lot of swing and misses. I think Friday the 13th series has a lot of the same problems in the sense that there are just a lot of swings and misses because as they're trying things out, and sometimes I kind of like the weird stuff where they try out. I think it's Friday the 13th, like 7, The New Blood. It's like a weird psychodrama. There's like psychic fights. It's like scanners. They try to do something different, and I appreciate that in these franchises when they just like, fuck it, let's be weird. I can appreciate that. But you know, Freddy vs. Jason, if you're a fan, it is a worthy entry into the both franchises, both series. I think it does justice by the characters. And even if it's more of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie than it is a Friday the 13th movie. All right, everybody. Well, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for listening. You want to know more about Zoobox, check the links in the description, and you'll be on your way. All right, everybody. Have a good one. Goodbye.